Thank you, Madam Chair. Before I go into what I want to say, and I think I say as a member of the subcommittee, I think everyone knows how I voted the last time and how I intend to vote tonight. But at that meeting, before I began, I said that one of my key role being a member of the school committee is the pride that I see in our students in Cranston and the quality of students that we produce in the city of Cranston. And again, I want to reiterate, Eric Barelli, Jessica Oquis, Taylor Grenga, and Alyssa Bonet, when you spoke, not only before the subcommittee, and Eric, you weren't there because you were vacationing in Italy, but and tonight when you spoke, I want you to know, irrespective of how you voted and whether we agree or disagree with one another, all is well with the student body in Cranston. You all performed admirably, you spoke cogently and articulately, and most importantly, on sensitive issues, you spoke very professionally. So I'm very proud of you as a student. That being said, Mr. Raposa, I hate to take credit where it was given, but Mrs. Culhane did not wear the 3 hats. It was me that was wearing the 3 hats that night, and the 3 hats were one of being a lawyer, being an elected official, and being what the Providence Journal said, a practicing Catholic. I guess I used that word. And all 3 of those inevitably are intertwined and come into my role as an elected official. And I said at that point that as an elected official, I have a responsibility to the taxpayers of the city of Cranston. And specifically, Mr. Borsha, my good friend at that time at the subcommittee meeting, asked me if this was a done deal. And I suggested to Ray at that night that this was certainly not a done deal, that we had worked very hard and we considered every position and every point and listened to everything that we got, every threat that was made to us, every person that was going to vote against us, every person that was going to vote with us, and we kept an open mind, not only at that subcommittee meeting, Mrs. Culhane, Mr. Trafficante, and myself, but throughout this entire process. I've read every single email that I've received. I watched the DVD presented to us by Mr. LaRue. I learned quite a bit, Mr. LaRue, I told you when I watched that DVD, about capital and the history. I knew quite a bit that the religion was inevitably intertwined with our government and has been for many, many years, for over 200 years. I learned about the picture of Columbus, and I learned about the baptism of Pocahontas, and I learned about all of the religious references in that DVD, and I paid attention. And I also listened to every single email that I received from hooray for you for keeping the banner up, and who does the ACLU think they are, to people telling me that if we take the banner down, refusal to remove the banner, I should say, would be breaking the law. And then I got a canned response from 6 or 7 same people. When I say a canned response, I mean everyone put the same words together and just signed it at the bottom and tried to tell me in my way, in my position as a lawyer, quoting the great Hugo Black, a former Supreme Court justice, how we are breaking the law if we don't remove it. And then I think it was finally summed up the best by one of our last writers who reminded us that we're damned if we do and damned if we don't. So as usually is the case, we as school committee members, we never get unanimous support for what we do because of the nature of the beast. But that being said, and having read all of that, I indicated at that subcommittee meeting that, you know, I think I said, what I might have said was that the Catholics were taking this one on the chin because it was an inherently Catholic prayer on the wall, and I suggested at that time that it was not. And Maria Armento from the Journal actually quoted me as saying that I said that the words Heavenly Father is generic, and so I asked Maria before this meeting started what her definition of generic meant. What I meant was, and you know, Maria is a much better writer than I am. What I meant to say was that reference to our Heavenly Father certainly has relevance to many religions and not just to a Catholic religion or to a Christian religion. And so I went and looked online, and I saw online that it does in fact have references. And like Mr. Cascione said, I read with great fervor the Van Orden case. And Madam Chair, forgive me for being a little long-winded. I'm not going to take 3 minutes. It's my God-given right to take as long as I want, as I like to.
We couldn't stop you if we tried anyway, so.
And when the Van Orden case was brought before the Supreme Court, it was a display of a monument inscribed with the 10 Commandments on the grounds of the Texas State Capitol. And in that instance, they ruled that it was constitutional and not a violation of the First Amendment for Texas to allow such a inscription on its grounds. And to my brother, Mr. Cascione, brother in the law, not to be confused with the weatherman brother in real life, but they did say, the Supreme Court did say in that opinion, and I quote, that we have been particularly vigilant in monitoring compliance with the Establishment Clause in elementary and secondary schools. However, they did go on to talk at length, about the lemon test and the three-pronged test that Mr. Cascione talked about. And in fact, actually said in the Van Orden case that the lemon test did not apply. It wasn't useful in dealing with this sort of what they call a passive monument, or a historically passive monument. And they use sweeping language, like Mr. Palella said earlier, that simply having a religious content or promoting a message consistent with religious doctrine does not run afoul of the Establishment Clause. And the cases that they cited where it did run afoul, were cases in the public schools where the 10 Commandments were posted in every single classroom. This is not that case. This is a very innocuous, very historical, and by the way, I offer parenthetically, I can find no better justification for that monument than hearing it from the author himself. And it's there, it's innocuous, it's not intended to be religious. He called it, and I quote, a non-denominational prayer. And so it's not the test in Marsh versus Chambers or in the Stone case where the 10 Commandments were being posted throughout the school. Interestingly, the Van Orden case dealt with a 40-year passive monument. Arguably, this one's a 51-year passive monument that talked about conveying a secular moral message. In my opinion as a lawyer, ladies and gentlemen, I think the Van Orden case goes quite a long way in supporting our position to defend the banner at Cranston School West. But I'm not suggesting we're going to win. The Supreme Court did talk about the two faces of this. One face in one direction looks towards the strong role played by religion and religious traditions in our nation's history. The other side talks about the fact that our nation needs to separate itself from religions. But as a lawyer, as a practicing Catholic, and as an elected official, I have an obligation to vote the way I have to vote. And I try and keep my position, my personal feelings at the door, although I think it's inherently impossible to do that. As a lawyer, I have my feelings. As an elected official, someone asked me, a lawyer asked me in an email, that my obligation, and I don't want to misquote them, is a civil one in the preservation of the highest quality of education. And he goes on to say, the dogmatic religious beliefs of some well-intentioned vocal minority will not prevail in court. Well, I'm not sure about prevailing in court, but I am sure that as a civil elected official, the majority of the people of Cranston want this banner restored and kept. And that's the way I intend to vote.